I'm not gonna lie, there was a point where I genuinely thought Rick and Morty was cooked. Not even bad or terrible, just straight up cooked. The kind of show that gets millions of viewers but doesn't really dominate those conversations you have anymore. And honestly, after 9 seasons, that's completely understandable. Most shows don't even survive 3 seasons without completely falling apart, and most shows should have ended in 3 seasons. Rick and Morty somehow managed to survive cast changes, writer changes, fan backlash, and an entire season not performing to what they expected it to. I mean, you and I have got to admit, somewhere along the way, the show lost something. Not necessarily quality, just momentum. Because remember what Rick and Morty used to feel like? Every episode felt unpredictable. You genuinely had no idea where things were going. A simple adventure could suddenly become an existential nightmare, and that's exactly what they did with episode 1 of season 9. For the first time in years, Rick and Morty felt dangerous again, and before I get into why, I should probably make something clear. I'm not saying this is the greatest episode in the show's history. It's not beating Rick Lantis' mix-up, and it's definitely not beating the Vat of Acid episode. And depending on who you ask, it probably isn't even cracking the top 5. But what it does do is remind you why this show became such a phenomenon in the first place, because this episode understands something a lot of recent Rick and Morty stories forgot. The show works best when the characters matter as much as the science fiction. Sounds obvious, but think about it. Nobody fell in love with this show because of the portal guns or the weird central finite curve. People actually stayed because they cared about Rick, they cared about Morty, they cared about the weird dysfunctional disaster of a family at the center of all the insanity. Straight up bars. The giant sci-fi concepts were just a delivery system, and this episode gets that immediately. Within the first few minutes you can feel something different. The writing feels sharper, the dialogue has that old school Rick and Morty rhythm again, the jokes actually land for once. And most importantly, there's tension, real tension. Reintroducing Evil Morty was the right move, because there's an element of surprise and fear surrounding him already. So we as the audience are left wondering, what is this guy really up to? And obviously we laugh at Morty sounding like a jealous girlfriend, because he thinks Evil Morty is stealing his grandpa. But at the same time, the entire central finite curve is in danger. In other words, every version of the universe where Rick is the smartest. And so the very reality of our characters is at the risk of coming to an end. And Rick and Evil Morty have decided to team up against the entity responsible, called the Collective. And the one thing that's always been Rick and Morty's secret weapon is it's never just a comedy. It's always something else as well. And this episode specifically, it's a comedy wearing the skin of an existential crisis. And what's especially impressive is how confident the episode feels. The writers just finally focus on telling a good story without any bullshit forced comedy. And weirdly enough, that's what makes this season feel so different from the last one. Because that confidence in the writing is contagious. When a show believes in itself, you can really feel it. And throughout the entire episode, Rick and Morty feels like a show that suddenly remembered exactly what made it special. It was always about the characters, the relationships, the existential dread hiding underneath all the insanity. That's the stuff that people actually care about. And this episode understands that better than almost anything we've gotten in years. What's more is it feels like they upped the animation budget by 10 times. Because that fight scene with the Collective was definitely something I've never seen before in Rick and Morty. I mean, it felt like I was watching an anime, for crying out loud. And we don't really mind it because the action has always been a part of the charm for this show. And the fact that they're now spending money trying to make it 10 times better is something that should have happened a long time ago in all seriousness. And so there's only really one question left to ask. Is this a true comeback or just a one-off? I guess we'll have to wait till the next episode. But for now, no complaints, because for the first time in a long time, I've actually enjoyed Rick and Morty and what it's had to offer. Yeah, I enjoyed pretty much everything apart from that little comedic bit about slurs.
Let's all say them at the same time. 3, 2, 1.
Maybe don't include that next time. But hey, you know what? At least they're improving the comedy, and that's a step in the right direction. And boy oh boy, I can't wait to see what they have left in store for us this season. And if you guys can't wait either, subscribe, because I'm going to be covering hopefully nearly every episode in this season, and let's hope it's a good one. Thank you guys for watching, like and subscribe, and peace.